Now for today's program. Manfred Lindenbaum is a child Holocaust survivor. At the age of 6, he and his 9-year-old brother survived by escaping on a Kindertransport boat from Poland to England, leaving behind their 14-year-old sister and parents who were sent to Auschwitz and murdered. Many years later, in 1946, when Manny was 14, he and his brother were sent to the United States to their aunt and uncle's chicken farm in New Jersey. For over 7 decades, Manny has been a peace activist involved with refugees and remains active with HIAS, which had helped him escape Europe and immigrate to the United States. Manny founded the Peace, Genocide, and Holocaust Center at Ocean County College in New Jersey, created the first Jewish Family and Children's Services for the Ocean County Jewish Federation, and chaired its Community Relations Committee. Manny was an active member of the Brookdale Community College Holocaust Center and conducted prison workshops on alternatives to violence. He also served on the Labor Zionist Alliance and was founding member and a past president of the American Habonim Association of Central Jersey. Manny has spoken to thousands of children, warning against hatred and bigotry and inspiring them to responsibly change the world. In 2014, Manny completed a 28-day odyssey, returning to Poland and Germany to retrace his and his family's last steps. Joining Manny today is Nadine Epstein, editor-in-chief and CEO of Moment Magazine, and founder and executive director of the Center for Creative Change. Please welcome Manny Lindenbaum and Nadine Epstein.
Thank you, Manny, for joining us today. Before we start, I need to tell all of you that I met Manny and his wonderful wife, Annabelle, in the lobby of Hotel Casablanca in Casablanca this May. It was at the beginning of Moment's 2023 expedition to Morocco. I was immediately struck by the twinkle in his eyes and his big grin and the way he moved around like a teenager. And he was 90. He was a Holocaust survivor who had a grim childhood and a grim youth. And yet he had such amazing energy. And I have to tell you one story. We were on a bus and we were driving through the Atlas Mountains after visiting a Berber village. And on our right were some camels and some men. And the bus driver pulled over and our guide announced that we could get off the bus and ride a camel if we dared. The first person, and he leapt off the bus, was Manny. He loped out, he climbed up a ladder, and in no time he was riding a camel. Inspired by him, I hopped off the bus too, and I got on my camel, and then soon others climbed on their camels. It was a lovely tourist moment, but it's an example of Manny's leadership, his zest, and his love of life. I think of it often. Since that trip, Manny and Annabelle have become dear friends. They came to DC for a Moment's Gala. I've been to their home near Lakewood, New Jersey, and I'm thrilled to talk to Manny today. I'm looking forward to gaining some insight about how to transcend trauma and give back to the world. So, Manny, to begin with, why don't we start with some of that grim, difficult childhood that you had? Could you tell us a little bit about your family and your childhood in Germany?
My childhood in Germany was not that great, although I don't remember any trauma, but I remember that I would be punished if I went out of the house because I once went to a Nazi rally by myself. I was probably 5 years old, and my mother was petrified when I got back, and I got punished. So
But why did you go? Why did you go to a Nazi rally at 5 years old?
I wasn't permitted out of the house, and it looked, a whole bunch of people were getting together there. It looked like something I wanted to see. And so I obviously had no idea what it was about. And what I do remember is that my sister, who was like 8 years older than me, even in my earliest memories, she was always surrounded by her friends, and there was only 3 Jewish girls in her class. So they were mostly Christians, even after the Nazis came into power. And but I also remember that those girls, one by one, did not come around anymore. And in the end, there was none. My sister never came home from school beaten up. I wasn't permitted to go to school. My brother would come home just about every day, beaten up by kids, sometimes in the classroom. And he insisted on going back to school the next day. He had the option. I wasn't permitted to start school.
So you were the baby.
Yeah, but I would have been in school under other circumstances, and one memory I do have is that my mother went to the school to speak to the teacher and said he got beaten up in class, and the teacher had told her there was nothing he could do. It was an absolute lie, because at that point there were people who stood up, but we didn't have upstanders in my town.
So what was the name of your town?
Unna, Unna, in the Ruhr Valley, North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany. And it was actually a lovely little town. I even remember one of the streets because my friend lived on it, and it was a Krummfußstraße, Crooked Foot Street. And sadly, he was murdered in the Shoah. But I remember him as I would today. Was this the worst part of my life? No, because I still had my family, my sister, my brother, friend, and
Parents. And your parents?
and my parents, and I'll explain to you why I mentioned them so little. 2 weeks before Kristallnacht, they rounded up about 17,000 of us. And because we had a Jewish grandparent, I think that was the criteria, and who had come from the East. And they rounded us up. I did some research and found out it was Thursday, and they took us to the train station, and they held us there until the sun went down on Friday night. And I think the reason I remember that so clearly is my blind grandfather, my Zeta, was on the train, and there was dead silence. We'd been there for 36 hours, and he started the Friday night services. And this is a very beautiful, clear memory for me, because I was sitting next to him or on his lap on one of those, and he broke the tension. And again, we were only allowed to bring a little bit with us. And when we got to the border, they got us off the train, and with guns and dogs chased hundreds, if not thousands of us to the border, where the Polish guards tried to keep us out. And we overwhelmed them when we were in Poland. Not a terrible time for me still. I was with my family. And for 10 months, we were in Spongen. And when I think about it, there was more, I think there was twice as many of us as there was a local population. And I was more free there than I had been in Germany. They did not harass us. They let people sleep in the horse stables. They let people sleep in the streets. We moved into a burnt out building, and nobody harassed us. And we were on the fourth floor. And to me, it was not horrible. My family was there, and they kept me comfortable, and I was able to go out and play. My mother, I remember her lugging a barrel down the 4 flights of steps to take to the rabbi to find out how to kosher it. And it's a funny memory for me to have. And uh, we had no water, we had no heat, there was no light or no toilets. And for 10 months, this continued. And then I do remember Joint Distribution Committee and Hyatt's coming in and giving us cotton bags where we could put straw in so we weren't lying on the ground or the floor, which made quite a bit of difference. They made sure we had enough to eat. And my mother and sister were initially part of that effort. And it was not a bad time for me at all. But when the German army came over the border 10 months later, and we were in a panic down to the railway station where the organizations were going to try to get us east, and my mother shoved, this is my memory, my mother shoved me over to a stranger and took off, and my friend who was with me started to cry, and his mother came and kissed and hugged him. And I found out later they were both murdered in Auschwitz.
So your family was at a train station in Poland in this town, and
Yes,
so the Germans were coming, and so your mother gave you to who? Tell us a little bit about what happened.
to a strange man, and I did not cry. I got very angry. I got angry at my parents. I got angry at everybody. I became a problem for everybody.
Well, why? Well, before we go there, why you tell us about? So she had heard that she there was she
She had,
wanted to save you. So who was she had heard there was a way to get you out? Tell us a little bit about that.
well, much, much later, I found out that they had signed me up for Kindertransport, and where 10,000 kids were taken in by England, and that was all over at this point. And but this man said it, read out the names, and took the bunch of us for the next 10 days. We first went to Warsaw. By the way, I just found that out a few months ago, that I had been in Warsaw, because I could never figure out how did I see my Zeta along the way. And when I went to a union, somebody who had been on that same journey said, we first went to Warsaw, and that's where my grandfather was at a Jewish home for the blind.
So tell us a tiny bit before we get a little bit more. So you're at the train station, you leave, does your brother go with you also? You have one
My
brother and one
brother,
sister.
there was me and my brother, and nobody else that I knew.
And then what happened to where were your sister and your parents stayed at this
my
train station?
my parents were at the train station. My sister had been sent to an Ort camp in Otwock. That was a Jewish camp where she was getting an education and a trade. And she was 14. And after Warsaw, we stopped at Otwock, and there I saw my sister. I remember how great that was. And uh, I remember that I actually slept on a bed there, which I hadn't done this entire period of time. I can still visualize the bed. And we continued on to the port. And at the port, there was a Polish troop ship by the name of the Warszawa. And this was the last boat out for the Kindertransport. And when we got there, some idiot decided that my sister was too old and couldn't go, and couldn't get on board. And I ran away and hid, and she found me and dragged me back and held me down while my head was shaved to get rid of the lice, which I was perfectly happy to keep. And that was the last time I saw my sister, and me and my brother uh, were on our boat on our way to England. And my anger was really out of control.
What happened when you got to England?
The organization uh, for the Kindertransport was basically done, but there was a nice Jewish family, and they saw that my brother was the brightest kid there, and they had a son that age, and they whipped him away. And that was one more reason for me to get furious and angry. I remember they'd had somebody said, the one who knows the most English gets a prize. And my brother naturally won. He was a very bright kid as opposed to me. And as he was leaving, he tossed me this little bag of coins. I remember the first family, a Christian family, took me in for 24 hours. And the second one beat me because they found that bag of coins and decided that I had stolen them. And I went through a very bad period where I continued to be trouble to everybody. But I do remember about 3 years, a stranger came up to me and put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "No." That was my brother. He was only 2 years older than me, and he had to listen to everybody complaining about me. And then for the last 3 years, I was taken in by might have been 4 years. I was taken in by a Christian family. I'd always been at Christian families, although I did have to go to uh, a Jewish boys' home for services every Shabbat. And they couldn't deal with me. They tried taking me in. Beautiful thing that happened to me in England, as I was making trouble, even had the police think I was a member of the Stern Gang when I played with electric wires and started a fire. Uh, the somehow out of nowhere, people reached out to help me. And I remember I went to a reunion and somebody asked me, "Tell me something I can make into a headline." And I said, "I'd like to thank Mrs. Knowles." And he took out his cell phone that was the conversation. And he dialed a number, and I'm speaking to somebody, and I said, "Do you remember me?" And she, "No, no, no, no." I said, "Don't you remember your daughter came home from college and gave me a stamp collection, which I still have?" And she said, "That was me." So when and we then had a beautiful conversation. And as I was able to tell her what an angel her mother had been, she would pick me up and give me a bath and cookies, and made a real difference. And so I asked the guy, "How did you have that phone number?" He said, "She reached out to all the troubled kids." And I thought that was amazing. It was a lesson in my life, which I never forget. And when I see somebody who looks like they're trouble and they're bullying or making a thing, those are the people I reach out to. And I always think of her. But the main reason I would reach out to somebody is my sister, who managed to get across Poland and joined my parents and had a job and was going to school and was studying English so she could speak to me, together with my mother and father, who were murdered in Auschwitz about 2 years later. And I found that out as a fact. So there was more than one person who reached out to me. I think it's amazing what a difference. I love talking to kids and telling them what a difference you can make in somebody's life by reaching out to them when they really need it, and their acting out is not because they're bad people, but because they need
They're in
some
pain.
compassion. They need somebody to listen. Listening is the important thing. Uh, so my time with this family was great. I they had a son, the Christian family. Uh, they had a son who was 2 years younger than me, and I was in his bedroom for all those years, 3, 4 years, and we both agreed that we never had an argument. And I was an angel in that house as I continued to make trouble on the outside. Uh, and again, when I was 10 and I wasn't able to spell the word cat, I got a teacher who didn't cane me like all the other teachers had. Uh, and in 1 year from 10, she was able to teach me everything so I could pass my 11s and continue on in school.
How old were you, by the way, when you got to England?
Uh, when I got to England, I had turned 7.
Okay, so you were really a little kid when all this was going on.
Yeah, I I was an amazing thing to me was that the grandchildren of the boy that whose bedroom I was in found me on YouTube, and they're in Australia, and I really enjoy being able to speak to them, which I do on a fairly regular basis. They found me.
That's so wonderful. Well, tell us how you got to America, because you've been here for a long time, and what brought you to these shores?
Well, I did not want to go to America. Uh, I thought it was my job in life to go to what was then Palestine and create a homeland for Jewish people who would have been saved if there was a place to go, because everybody had closed off their doors. And at age 14, uh, I felt that that was my job to go to Israel and do that. I got a letter from my grandfather in Israel, Palestine at that point, saying, "You have an aunt in America who wants you, and that's where you're going. You're not coming here. There's nobody here who would take you in." Well, I didn't want to be taken in, and my brother felt the same way, and we ended up going to my aunt and uncle. They had been in a camp in Holland, and I got this story not from my uncle, but from somebody else, a relative who was in the camp, and he had seen a pregnant woman getting kicked in the stomach by a guard, and he went and he knocked the guy unconscious. They beat him to a pulp and threw him on a train to be killed. And the Polish, this was in Holland, and the Dutch underground, and there was a Dutch underground in spite of the fact that Poland was the most dangerous place for a Jew to hide out in. And they got him off the train, and they took him to a man by the name of Jaap Pendrik, who had made documents for 1,200 Jewish young men. All of them survived, saying they worked for the Nazis. And with that, he was able to get my aunt, and he was able to get to France and then to Africa and write a letter to a brother who was on welfare in England, in America, who got a hold of a rabbi and then Bronfman, and they got him into the United States in 1942. At Ellis Island, when you went to Ellis Island, if you were sick, you would get sent back no matter what. They did not pick up the fact that my aunt had stomach typhus, which was common for people in camps. And she spent 5 weeks in the hospital, and then they worked in sweatshops and saved up $1,500. And got $1,500 from a Jewish organization to buy a chicken farm, and they brought me to that chicken farm in 1946.
This is in what part of New Jersey?
Oh, that's in Monmouth County, about 20 minutes away from where I live now. So I didn't move too far, and I loved the farm. My aunt and uncle were both traumatized as survivors, and but I think my brother once talking about it, that for the first time in his life, he got a hug. And I kind of remember that, what a difference it made. It was a little weird because the upbringing had been pretty formal.
You're 14 or 15 years old and you're on a chicken farm in Monmouth County, New Jersey. And what was that? And you worked on the farm?
I worked on the farm. My brother, who had been in nice Jewish families but had never seen a doctor, dentist, or anything else, ended up spending 5 months at Temple University Hospital. He had rotten teeth, and his organs were all messed up. And when he got out, he spent a couple of months in high school, and then he went to college, and in 5 years, he got his master's and PhD, worked for the Atomic Energy Commission, and became a professor, and lived a fantastic life, and has a fantastic family. He did die young at 63 because he worked with radioactive isotopes for the Atomic Energy Commission.
So you then are 2 years younger than he is. You're on a chicken farm. What happens to you?
I stayed on I managed to graduate from high school just about. I continued getting into trouble, never on the farm, and I always had the feeling, even when I was making trouble, that my sister is up there on a cloud watching me, and I had better be doing something good. And every time I would volunteer for something, she would smile down on me. And that made a continuing difference in my life.
How did you meet Annabelle?
Oh, and Annabelle describes it as a very blind date. My friend's mother had got him a date with somebody in Brooklyn, and he said he wasn't going to go by himself. So that's how.
Oh, you went with him, and then you met
Annabelle, and she obviously bewitched me because I was, as soon as I met her, I knew that this was my Besherte, and we've had a fabulous life. Most amazing thing with Annabelle is whether I was climbing a mountain or we were going skiing in the dark, or going from one adventure to another, she was always there by my side. Not quite sure that she should be there in her mind. So I had a beautiful partner, and as I became active in making a difference, whatever I was involved with, she would back me up and keep me going. And this went on for years until I backed off and she started being active.
Well, let's start a little bit. So for all these years, I know from talking to you before, when you're young and when you marry, even in your marriage for many years, you do not talk about what happened to you in in Poland or in Germany. This is just, I know you're silent.
I
And how does that impact you psychologically to be silent?
never even entered my mind that I would share any of that. It was someplace, a dark spot in my brain. And I didn't say a word to Annabelle. I didn't say a word to my kids. Uh, I certainly, we never mentioned, I never mentioned my mother to her sister who I lived with. It was something that was in a dark place in my mind. And as for my mother and father, I was so angry at them that they had left me. While actually they were heroes that they were able to do that. That I have trouble even today to remembering them. While I can remember my sister in details, and so that gives me something to feel guilty about when I wiped those memories out. But when my grandchildren came, I couldn't stop talking. They invited me to talk to their schools. I talked to them personally, and uh, and it made a difference for me, and I think it made a difference for them.
Well, tell me a little bit about the conversation that you had with your brother on when he was dying.
When my brother was dying, and he he had not been ready to talk either, but at that point he was, and I wasn't, and I didn't realize he was trying to get me to start to talk. He didn't start to talk. And what he did tell me was that he had lectured in our hometown, he'd met with local historians, and that the people in Unna kept saying that my sister was alive and that she had a kid. And he said, if you go there, it's nonsense. Don't spend a lot of time, but go. So when he died, I did go. And I have this picture of my sister with 43 girls in her class. And uh, I got a hold of a local historian, and he put the story in the paper, front page with a picture. And a total of 20 women answered. And I spoke to them one by one, and they all kept saying she's alive, but we didn't see her. And in the end, I was told that it's not true. They couldn't face the fact that they had stood by and that she'd been murdered. Uh, and I have a picture of the Gedenkstein. That's the memorial to the people they killed. And all of the names are faded, except the one they put on after that visit, which was my sister. Uh, and uh, I find it difficult to hate her friends. It used to be that when I met somebody who was German, my stomach would tighten up, uh, and I would feel uncomfortable. Then I would go to a peace rally. I'd go to an environmental rally all over the world, all over the country. And even when I volunteered for 6 months on a kibbutz in Israel, I always met young German people who were looking for their way in life because of what had happened, what their families had done. And I slowly came to the realization that you cannot have any blame for the next generation. If you do, you are creating evil.
Well, let's go back to you a little bit. So you were very angry and you weren't speaking about what happened. You never even thought to speak about what happened until your grandchildren came along. And I know you spent the last few years just talking to lots of groups and organizations And I'm just wondering, how has talking about what happened to you really changed you?
I get such beautiful letters from kids after I talk, uh, in which uh, at least half of the letters say they are not going to be bystanders when they see something bad happening, and that's the reason the reason I talk. And I'm not going to reach every kid, but the fact is that it's not it's not the evil people that we can reach. It's the bystanders. And uh, I love to tell them stories about incidents in schools where the kids were bystanders and how they afterwards I get these unbelievable letters saying that they're never going to, after listening to me, they're not going to be a bystander. I was blown away when a teacher told me that after listening me talking to his kids, he started a program for the school of not being bystanders, of making a difference. Because when you're the bystander and you see something bad, you hear something bad, you might just as well be doing it because you're causing it to happen. Anyway, that's what I believe. Uh, then there's the other thing I like to talk to kids about, and that's volunteering. There's nothing that gives me greater joy than volunteering, whether it's in schools. I've volunteered in prisons, and I was on the board of a Quaker group, Alternative to Violence. The fact that you can have an unbelievable impact by reaching out and showing that the other guy doesn't have to lose for you to win. Uh, and it's more important to listen than to talk. I know I didn't reach everybody, but there were enough people in prison who I had a real impact on that I got more out of it than I gave.
Was there one volunteer experience that you've had that really stands out in your mind?
I was talking in prison, and a man came over and gave me a hug, and it was in Greenhaven, a maximum security prison. And he said, "You got to know, I'm here for 18 years, and I've never touched anybody. And if anybody touched me, they were on the ground. And you made such a difference. You just not didn't make such a difference in me. I'm in prison, and I have a better relationship now with my family. And you can't get any more than that. It's a thing of beauty."
So I just want to go back to the chicken farm. What happened to the chicken farm, and
Oh,
what did you
well,
end up doing with what did you end up doing with your work life?
so I remember going to Monmouth University to see if I could start college, and they told me they were going to make an exception because of my grades were so bad, but that I had to pay $167, and I thought that was absolutely a fortune, that totally ridiculous. So I never went to college. The farm was broke, but I loved it, and I sold the eggs uh, in town, and I went to North Jersey. I even went to New York, and uh, I got married. Annabelle moved to the farm, uh, and uh, uh, and the farm was broke, and uh, uh, eventually the feed company got it, and I got a job in the post office, and then I got a job as a driving instructor, and then I bought an old broken down house, and I started to fix it up, and that's what I continued doing for many.
You had an egg distribution business, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't exactly an egg dealer because I remember we in town when I organized the UJA, I organized egg dealers, and somebody told me, "You're a peddler, you're not a dealer," and I liked that. So I made a sign, Manny the peddler. Uh, uh, but so I again I didn't I hardly made a living at it, but uh, as long as I was able to save $10 a month, I was happy. And uh, my raised a beautiful family. We uh, had all kind of adventures, volunteering for 6 months on kibbutz, joining a group under the first President Bush, uh, on the Clearwater with Pete Seeger, and spending an unbelievable amount of time on the Hudson River teaching kids about the environment, and then getting together with another group to make peace with the Soviet Union. And we uh, sailed from New York to Leningrad with a bunch of Soviets. Uh, and I remember uh, on that 40-day trip, 40 days and 40 nights, uh, organizing workshops, uh, and uh, we always did something a little bit extra when we got to the Leningrad. Annabelle and me jumped off the ship and took off, followed by two members of the Secret Service. We were the only ones who were followed because I had identified myself as a friend of refuseniks. And we went and we visited refuseniks all over Leningrad, uh, and brought them news and made connections for them. Uh, and I have a feeling that if we would have done what we did today, we would have ended up in the Gulag. But that was the time of Gorbachev when they followed you, but they didn't interfere.
Well, you haven't wasted any time. You've made so much of your time here.
Uh,
So it's
I,
amazing.
yeah, no, I helped found a multicultural committee 30 years ago, when anti-Semitism was rearing its head a little bit, and I worked with uh, a black minister, uh, and uh, the thing is, no matter what I did, I always got back more than I received. Uh, we did set up a group, Project Understanding, where we had Palestinians and some people from Egypt, and Jews, and we uh, looked at each other's cultures, talked about it. We made trips to Washington, where I arranged just to meet with congressmen to find avenues for peace. But I'm sad to say that at 9/11, the group broke up, with everybody thinking that the other person was the cause, and I wasn't able to get them back together again.
I know we're going to need to wind up soon, but I want to ask you just two more questions. One is, well, today, obviously, we are facing a level of anti-Semitism and hate that we haven't in decades. And I'm wondering what you think about it and what your recommendation is. What should we be doing?
Me, there is no question that at the moment I have to support Israel. I don't think there's a choice. I pray that they're doing everything possible to avoid civilians. Although I know
But
it's
here in the United States, what are you thinking about dealing with anti-Semitism here?
well, it's while it's very easy to get depressed. I think we have to reach out. We have to reach out not to somebody who's violently anti-Semitic, but to people who are on the fence. And we have to keep conversations going, because if there's anything that's been wrong in the United States, not just with anti-Semitism, but with the divide between peoples, is that we don't talk to each other. I was at a meeting and I told a woman who disagreed with me, I said, after the meeting, can you come and listen to me? I will listen to you and try to find areas of agreement. And her answer was, I wouldn't even talk to you at all. And we have to find people we can talk to. And we have to moderate our language, that a Palestinian mother is in the same, has the same amount of anguish as a Jewish mother. And we need to find a way of talking to each other so that we can both exist and have good lives.
Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. So is there one lesson from your amazing life that you'd like to pass on to your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, to all of us?
My one thing would be that there is no greater joy than attempting to make a difference. And sometimes you're not going to succeed. That's not the point. The point is you're out there attempting to make a difference, and part of the time that's going to work, and you're going to change lives. You're going to change the world, and you're going to feel so good about yourself that. And for me, it's having my sister smiling down on me. Uh, so Ruth is with me, and my message is make a difference, and you're going to have a good life. The two go together.
Manny, thank you so much for talking with us today. I'm so touched, and thank you, Annabelle, back there also, because Annabelle and Manny are really a team.
Oh yeah, I think it's amazing how, in the beginning, I was busy organizing always the community and everything else, and Annabelle was doing the work behind the scenes. And now, and then it metamorphosed that she's the one who's the head of the federation and the head of this and the head of that, and is making a difference.
Could we have Annabelle? Annabelle, how would you like to just come over here for a minute so we can all see you?
Hi, Nadine.
Hi. There you are. So here's team Annabelle and Manny. And together they've made a huge difference in the world. And I just want to thank you so much. And thank you for being my friend. And thank you for joining us today and talking to everyone.
That's great. Thank you so much for having
You're
us.
definitely a role model for us.
I think you are. Both of you are. Again, thank you.
Good day. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.